Pirate God Level Cartoonist, Chapter 141 to 160. Chapter 141 Promotion Task. In the warehouse, Hawkeye glanced coldly, and the muzzles of the guns around him were pointed at him, and he came to the table in a few steps. "How do you sell swallows?" Hawkeye asked. 100,000. The big man buried his head and ate wildly, without even raising his head. 100,000. Hawkeye frowned, and an icy aura suddenly rose from his body. "Do you say it again?" 100,000, what are you? Poof. The big man sprayed rice in his mouth and raised his head cursingly. When he saw Hawkeye, his pupils shrank, and a mouthful of minced meat spurted out. But fortunately, his response was fairly quick, and he quickly covered his mouth so that he didn't spray into Hawkeye's side. Hey, sir, I'm wrong. How much do you want for 10 bellies? The big man scratched his head nervously, but in his heart he scolded the mustache with eagle eyes. What's the matter? Let these guys take a good look at the wanted order, and don't even look at life or death. Something happened this time. He actually recruited Hawkeye Mahawk. Isn't this courting death? I want it all. Hawkeye was too lazy to meet these guys. After throwing out a golden bean and reporting an address, Hawkeye picked up a birdcage, turned around and left the warehouse. After he left, the big man suddenly collapsed to the ground, his face covered in cold sweat, looking like he was about to die. Boss, what's wrong with you? Boss, didn't you say 1,000 less? Why did you sell it to him for 10 bellies? Boss, I think the knife on his back is pretty good. How about we grab it? The subordinates on the side quickly gathered around. Sell, snatch, 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 snatch. The big man threw wildly at the head of his subordinates. Do you know who that is? Still robbing. I still want to live 2 more years. Hawkeye, who had already walked out of the warehouse, looked at the swallows in the birdcage expectantly. Now, you should be able to study Yunwei well, right? ... And. In the middle of the night, in the capital of 7 waters, Rome sat on the bed and waited for the settlement of the new month. Last month, his experience value had reached level 4 9.7 million, 10,000. As long as the settlement is settled on the first day of this month, he will be able to upgrade. At this rate of growth, within a few months, he can level up every month. Recalling the effect of the skills given by the system so far, Roha couldn't help but laugh happily. With his nimble hands, let his sword speed reach the limit. Shard enhancement, giving him a shard duration of 3 minutes. He also tried the effect of absolute calm with Arturia, and the effect was extraordinary. Even in battle, when the blade was about to reach his body, he didn't have any panic reaction, but kept calculating in his mind how to avoid fatal injuries and how to inflict more damage on the opponent while being injured. It's terrifying to be calm. Like a robot. And such skills, he will be able to have 1 more every month in the future. At this time, Roha could not wait to stand up and shouted, "I am invincible in the world." Soon, the clock on the wall finally pointed to 12 o'clock, and the system prompt sounded in my mind at the right time. Open black lens bracket ding. Fan value statistics start. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket follower value statistics completed. Close black lens bracket. The host has gained a total of 9.2 million fan points this month, according to the experience ratio. At the same time, the values on Roha's panel also began to change. Cartoonist level. Level 4 18.9 million, 10 million. Fan value. 17.6 million. Well, it's upgraded. Let me see what the new skills are. Roha nodded happily and opened the skill panel. However, the next moment, he couldn't help but froze in place. Gray. Is the skill panel grayed out? He looked up at the remaining skill points. 0. Grip the grass, what's the situation? Isn't it an upgrade? Roha was shocked, and quickly switched back to the attribute panel to take a look. Level 4 18.9 million, 10 million. Enough experience, but I haven't upgraded yet. Roha frowned, calling the system in his mind. System, what's the matter? Why didn't I upgrade? The host's experience value has reached the limit of junior cartoonists, and it is necessary to complete the promotion task and be promoted to intermediate cartoonists before continuing to upgrade. Intermediate cartoonist. What? Roha frowned and asked the system in his mind. After a question, he realized that the original cartoonist level is divided into a stage every few levels. 1 to 4 are junior cartoonists, 5 to 9 are intermediate cartoonists, 10 to 14 are senior cartoonists, and so on. Every time you reach a certain level, there will be promotion tasks, and only after completing the promotion tasks can you continue to level up. What really worries Roha is that new functions will appear every time he is promoted, and the attributes of the skills will be much stronger than before. Then what is my promotion mission now? Roha asked quickly. The promotion task has appeared in the task bar, please check it yourself. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 142 Gilgamesh. Open the taskbar, and sure enough, a new task appears in the taskbar. Open black lens bracket promotion mission. Give back to hardcore fans. Close black lens bracket. Task description. Die-hard fans promote comics for you every day. Is it easy for Amway Comics? Repay them well. Close black lens bracket. Mission goal. To fight their little wishes for 10 die-hard fans. Task reward. Promote to an intermediate cartoonist. Turn on the special care function. This is the rhythm of making me a grandfather. Roha looked at this task and was speechless. Help people make their wishes come true. System, are you serious? What cartoonist can do this? And what the hell is this special concern? You weren't sent by a certain penguin, were you? Special care function. After this function is turned on, the host will be able to see the main dynamics of die-hard fans, understand the physical condition of each other, and communicate with die-hard fans regardless of distance. Close black lens bracket. So, what is the use of this function? Roha was a little speechless. Why did he know the physical condition of the other party? Go for a warm hug. It seems that Roha also thinks that spiritual communication is a bit useful. If you cultivate a die-hard fan to be an intelligence officer, you will be able to understand the intelligence as soon as possible. 763 inches no. Wait, an idea suddenly popped into Roha's mind. System, can I see my list of hardcore fans now? Roha asked suddenly. Yes. The host can find this option in the system bar to decide which fans wish to fulfill. Close black lens bracket. Roha, who had a guess in his heart, couldn't wait to open the list of hardcore fans and check it out. The number of die-hard fans is not large, but in addition to the long-known Trafalgar Law, Roha saw a few unexpected people. Eustace Kid. Warring States. Carp. There is also a label in front of everyone. Kids is Rogue Leader, Warring States is Marshal, and Garps is Vice Admiral. This label is estimated to be written according to the current occupation of the other party. Rogue Leader. Looking at Kid's label, Roha burst out laughing. The teenage Rogue Leader is really enough. However, Sengoku and Garp are actually his fans, which really surprised Roha. If he pays special attention to the system as he imagined, then he will be able to grasp all the movements of Sengoku and Garp in the future, and even grasp the actions of the Navy as soon as possible. What is this special concern? It's just a voyeur system with voice communication. Roha laughed wickedly. In the future, if he was in the deepest sleep every night, he would shout in Sengoku's mind, he would will it be neurasthenia. With a smirk, after studying for a while, Roha also began to check everyone's little wishes. The operation method is very simple. Click on the name on the list, and then an extension column with the current small wishes of the fans will appear under the name. The current wish of the Warring States period is to solve the suicide case of a certain royal family heir in Shihai. Seeing the wish of the Warring States, Roha pouted, and without thinking, he skipped the Warring States. Don't look at the complete works of Conan in his mind, but let's forget about solving cases or something. Well, Garp's current wish is hope that the slaves of the dragon people will escape as soon as possible, and then go back to see Luffy. Seeing this, Roha's expression suddenly became weird. Mr. Cap, how much you want to let go of those slaves? It's become a wish. This is not something that can be completed in a short time. The next. Well, the next one is Kid. Roha stretched out his hand a little, and the extension bar suddenly appeared in front of him. Open black lens bracket. I want to learn the Sword of Iron Sand. Close black lens bracket. This kid, haven't learned it yet. Roha was a little speechless. Is the Sword of Iron Sand so difficult? It's been so long and I haven't learned yet. After thinking about it, Roha still wrote Kid's wish on paper, and planned to wait for a phone call with Masaka Makoto tomorrow to ask for the operation principle and training method of the Iron Sand Sword, and then mail it to Kid together. After writing, Roha suddenly raised his eyebrows and wrote the words Magneto behind Kid. What's the point of the Sword of Light meeting Iron Sand? Brother, I'll tell you a few more powerful tricks. Magneto, Kid. The appearance of Kid wearing a cape and a helmet appeared in his mind, and Roha couldn't help but smile. To be honest, this feeling of controlling the development of the characters in the plot is quite interesting. Next, Roha chose some not too outrageous wishes from the wishes of diehard fans and recorded them. Some want a stable job, some want a handy weapon, and some simply want money. For these, Roha made a big tick. Ready. After choosing 10, Roha put the filled note in the book and clicked on the lottery system. 17 million followers. See what you can draw. Roha first opened the storage space, looked at the stock of fragments, and confirmed that there was no shortage before opening the lottery interface. This time he wants to smoke all FSN. Compared with the Fourth War, the heroic spirit skills in the Fifth Holy Grail War are more attractive. System, start the lottery. Every time you consume 1 million fan points, all the Fate Stay Knights will be drawn. Command confirmed, start extraction. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host, getting Kodamine Kirei, FSN, Fragment X6. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host, skill, Golden Rule Fragment X3. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host, skill, Magic Eye Fragment X4. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host, character card, Gilgamesh. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Close black lens bracket. Roha, WTF. Rubbing his eyes, Roha suddenly jumped up, his face full of uncontrollable excitement. Hero King, Gilgamesh. The strongest hero in the 4 and 5 battles. Even among all the heroic spirits, they are still in the forefront. He actually got it. Originally, Roha thought that if he wanted to own Gilgamesh, he would need to accumulate fragments for a long time, but he never expected that he would pull it out at once. I really am the Emperor of Europe. Roha blushed with excitement, and couldn't wait to receive Gilgamesh's character card. As soon as his mind moved, the character card was activated. In an instant, an indescribable powerful force emerged out of thin air, poured into Roha's body, and began to transform his body. Then, a dazzling golden light bloomed from Roha's body, illuminating the entire villa. Chapter 143 Shocked. The color of this golden light is not as fiery as the sun, on the contrary, it seems to carry a boundless nobility and domineering, arrogantly occupying all the places that can shine. Roha, who had already transformed into Accelerator, was not surprised. He knew that because it was his first transformation, the system needed to extract the data in his body and compare it with Gilgamesh's data, so the first time would be longer. Quietly closing his eyes, Roha silently felt the power of the system and the knowledge that kept appearing in his mind. That's how Gilgamesh's full powers are used, as well as some of his memory. After a few seconds, the golden light no longer shone in all directions, but rushed towards Roha's body like a tide. A golden armor gradually appeared on his body. That is Gilgamesh's golden armor, which can nullify most of the magic. It has resisted Artoria's slashes several times and completely repelled Rin Tasaka's magic's top armor. At the same time that the golden armor appeared on Roha, his appearance also began to change. First, his height increased slightly by a few centimeters, and then his hair gradually became longer, from black to dazzling gold, and his pupils gradually turned red. Finally, the golden light like water completely disappeared from Roha's body, and the new transformation was completely completed. This is the power of Gilgamesh. Roha raised his palms in front of him, clenching them tightly, feeling the boiling power in his body, and his red eyes were full of excitement. Even if he is extremely excited, Roha still exudes a domineering arrogance that makes all living beings worship. Roha, who transformed into Gilgamesh, not only inherited all of Gilgamesh's power, but also inherited part of Gilgamesh's character. The pride that comes from the soul is one of them. Roha, who couldn't wait, jumped out of the house. Vamana. Roha thought for a moment, and then a huge golden aperture suddenly appeared above his head. From the aperture, a huge golden flying boat slowly sailed out. Golden boat, Vamana, the flying machine cue in ancient Indian myths and legends. With a deep jump, Roha has already boarded the golden boat and flew towards the sea in the distance. Square root 7v_chi. He wanted to try the power of Gilgamesh. The speed of the golden boat far exceeded Roha's imagination. Even if he did not drive with all his strength, the golden boat exploded at an astonishing speed, turning into a golden light and skipping the sky. A few minutes later, on the distant sea, there were bursts of roaring sounds from time to time, and it didn't stop until the early morning of the next day. It was later reported that several pirate groups were annihilated by unknown enemies that night. Even if the newspapers tried their best to find the survivors who survived by chance, they have not found out which strong man did it. The survivors only knew that they were lying on the boat sleeping well, and suddenly there was a sound of breaking the air. The next moment, their boat had been beaten with holes and countless companions died. When they wanted to see where the opponent was, they couldn't see anything. Even the best-sighted lookout could only see a ray of golden light disappearing into the sky. At noon the next day, Roha, who had slept for a while, took a note recording the wishes of die-hard fans, and came to the Dream magazine with joy. It was a blast last night. Gilgamesh's ability is simply a fighter-bomber. It is even said that it is much stronger than the original. In fact, it is also true, in addition to the lack of restraint in this world, Gilgamesh's battles in the original work are rarely serious, and more time is committed. Roha, who knows this well, how could he make this mistake? Naturally, if he doesn't make a move, he will use all his firepower when he makes a move. Unconsciously, Roha had walked outside the Dream magazine office, and just as he was about to push the door in, there was a sudden sound of glass breaking above his head. The next moment, Artoria's figure suddenly jumped out from the third floor and landed on the ground with a bang. Artoria, what are you doing? Roha raised his eyebrows and shouted subconsciously. Suddenly hearing Roha's voice, Artoria was stunned for a moment, and then turned her head in disbelief. When she saw that it was Roha, she rushed to his side. Before Roha could ask a question, Artoria spoke at a very fast speed. Estes and the others were intercepted by the beast pirates, and now she and Drago are fighting Kaido. The rest were besieged by the 100 beast pirates, and they couldn't hold it any longer. The beast pirates intercept Kaido. Roha's face tightened, and his brows suddenly wrinkled. Where are they now? Arturia didn't talk nonsense, and quickly said a location. Roha quickly took out a map of the new world, and after confirming the location, he was about to activate teleportation. At this moment, Artoria suddenly grabbed Roha's forearm, and her green eyes stared at him tightly. Take me. Good. Knowing the seriousness of the matter, Roha did not hesitate, grabbed Artoria's hand, and launched teleportation. Chapter 144 My King. After launching the teleportation 3 times in a row, Roha and Artoria were already close to the battlefield. In the distance, one could hear the roar of artillery fire and the screams of killing, and the battle was fierce. As soon as he appeared, Roja had turned into Accelerator and flew towards the battlefield with Artoria. As he kept getting closer, Roja gradually saw the situation on the battlefield. The fleet of the three beast pirates, one left and one right behind, sandwiched Estes' fleet in the center in a half-moon shape, and kept firing in the middle. Even if the hit rate of the shells was poor, it was still there were too many ships of the beast pirates, and the casualties were very heavy. Under such firepower suppression, facing the powerful beast pirates, the rapt fleet did not dare to start a battle, and could only flee in desperation. In the gap between the three fleets of the beast pirates, you can vaguely see dozens of well-built figures, shuttled across the seabed. Those are the Murloc warriors in the fleet, helping the fleet to delay time. However, even if the Murlocs are born with arm strength 10 times higher than that of humans, they still can't get any benefit in the face of the pirates at the level of the four emperors. As soon as they got close, bombs were thrown or guns were fired at them, and they were even shot with spearguns that hunted giant fish. In just a few seconds, Roja saw with his own eyes that a Murloc warrior was shot by a spear gun, screaming and being dragged to the boat by the people of the beast pirates. Although he was rescued by his companions in the end, he also lost his ability to fight. These bastards! Artoria's expression darkened suddenly, glaring at the approaching beast pirate's ship. And Roja, who was hugging Artoria, was already cold. Estes' fleet is his fleet, Estes' subordinates are his subordinates. He rescued these slaves with his own hands, and after accepting their gratitude towards the savior, Roja also regarded them as his own. Now, someone who dares to touch him is simply courting death. Roja's gloomy eyes kept glancing at Estes' fleet. What made him feel a little heavy was that he didn't find Estes and Drago. It stands to reason that with the strength of the two of them, even if they can't quickly annihilate the three pursuit fleets, they won't be beaten like this. Did you lead Kaido away? Roja's eyes began to glance at the fleet of the beast pirates, and sure enough, he also didn't see Kaido. However, he was able to see two figures with different imposing manners. These two people stood on the bows of the flagships of the left and right fleets, exuding a powerful imposing manner. One of them is Drought Jack, who Roja is very familiar with, and the other, although he doesn't know him, knows without thinking that he must be one of the three disasters. Arturia, you are in charge of the fleet on the left, leave the rear and the right to me. Roja did not hesitate and gave an order to Arturia. Got it. Arturia nodded solemnly. The next moment, Roja gently pushed Artoria's waist, and after the blessing of the vector operation ability, Arturia suddenly shot out like a cannonball, at an extremely fast speed towards the left side. The fleet flew away. Attention everyone, someone is coming from behind. In the sky. The 100 Beasts pirates are worthy of being a pirate group of the Four Emperors level. Even in the pursuit battle, there are watchers looking around, and they saw Arturia flying in the sky for the first time. In the sky, someone was stunned for a moment, and then saw Arturia, who was rapidly falling from the sky. This angle, won't it fall into the sea? Someone estimated the position of Arturia in their hearts, and said a little puzzled. Master Jack, do you need to send someone to kill that person? Someone asked Jack at that time. Just fire. Jack cast a cold glance, and Arturia, who fell from the sky, even if she is a master, falling into the water is just a matter of. Before he could finish speaking, Jack's eyes suddenly widened, with an unbelievable expression on his face. He looked in the direction of Arturia, and exclaimed subconsciously. Fuck. Damn it. What's the situation? That guy is actually standing on the water. Am I dazzled? How is it possible that someone can stand on the water? 4.9. Watch out for the boat behind, she's here. On the fleet, there were exclamations one after another. Boom. Arturia, who was wearing armor, fell vertically on the sea, splashing a splash of water, but what really surprised the beast pirates was that she did not fall into the water, but stood firm. The blessing of the fairy of the lake gave Arturia the ability to walk on water. After standing firmly, Arturia glanced at the fleet in front of her with murderous eyes. The next moment, start dashing. Chapter 145 Wind King Hammer. Arturia turned into a blue light, and pulled out a white line above the water, walking on the waves on the rough sea. In just a few seconds, Arturia had caught up with the pirate ship at the back. She is concerned about saving people, and she has no intention of retaining her strength at all. Taking a deep breath, Arturia slammed the sword across her shoulders and stabbed it with all her strength. Not good. Jack's heart skipped a beat, and after feeling the power condensed in Arturia's body, he hurriedly ran, trying to stop Arturia's blow, but it was too late. It only takes a moment to liberate the Wind King's enchantment. Wind King Hammer. The wind condensed around the sword body layer by layer was suddenly stripped from the sword body by Arturia, revealing the original appearance of the Sword of Oath 11 Victory. At the same time, the wind that was condensed by magic, after leaving the blade, burst into a depressing wind pressure. The almost real tornado swept out along the sword body, like a violent dragon, advancing forward. Countless seawater was pushed away by this violent dragon, and a ravine appeared briefly above the sea. The next moment, the furious dragon collided head-on with the pirate ship at the back. The fragile wooden structure was swallowed up by the giant dragon in an instant, and the wooden thorns and steel nails carried by the wind shot in all directions from the crowd, causing bursts of mourning. When the violent dragon swept through, the entire pirate ship had been reduced to pieces. However, this is not over yet. The power of the noble phantasm liberation is far beyond the power in the original work. The terrifying wind dragon, after destroying one pirate ship, was still advancing forward, and ran straight towards the next pirate ship. When Jack saw that a pirate ship was so easily destroyed by Arturia, his pupils shrank suddenly. Impossible. It was a battleship belonging to the beast pirates. It was made of special wood. How could it be destroyed so easily? And it was so completely destroyed. Seeing that the wind dragon was about to run into the second ship, Jack became anxious all of a sudden, suddenly accelerated his running speed, and then jumped high. Kaido has not allowed him to fail again. If too many battleships are destroyed here, even he will not be able to protect himself. Armed color hardening. While the man was still in the air, Jack's arms had already turned pitch black, and the powerful aura of armament instantly covered both of his arms. When Fenglong had just destroyed half of the second ship, Jack had already smashed the bow of the ship arrogantly, rushed into the cabin, and blocked the front of Fenglong. Boom! Like a giant slap, Jack's arms suddenly trembled at the moment he came into contact with the wind dragon. After the countless wind pressure hit him, it still rushed behind Jack along the gap, destroying the entire cabin. Crack, knock, underscore. Sawdust was flying, and seeing that the cabin was being destroyed more and more seriously, Jack was also a little anxious. If the ship is destroyed and he falls into the water, it's all over. Ah! Jack roared suddenly, his face flushed red, his eyes were bloodshot, and his whole body was even more exposed. The next moment, he suddenly waved his arms and pushed the wind dragon up. Boom! A suffocating wind pressure rose into the sky, broke the cabin, and flew towards the sky at extreme speed. The King of Wind Hammer was finally stopped by Jack. In the sky, Roha looked coldly at the wind pressure rising into the sky, and turned his head lightly. It is so laborious to deal with a King of Wind Hammer. It seems that with Arturia's strength, there is no problem in dealing with Jack, so next. It's his turn. Glancing at the chasing fleet in the distance, Roha frowned, and the next moment he cancelled Accelerator's transformation and became Gilgamesh. Using Accelerator's ability is too slow, and Gilgamesh is better to use. Above the sea, because of the liberation of Arturia's noble phantasm, it has fallen into a strange silence. The pursuit fleet stopped firing at the same time, and countless people stood by the fence, watching the destroyed pirate ship, not knowing what happened. On the other hand, the slave fleet didn't care about this. Taking advantage of the opponent's stop, they suddenly accelerated their speed and opened up the distance. They're going to run. Keep chasing. Fire. Keep firing everyone. The chasing fleet woke up in an instant, and the deck was in chaos. At this moment, an exclamation suddenly came from the observation deck. Watch out! We have people on our heads too. What? Where? Over there. Hold the grass, what is that? How can you fly in the sky? Fire and fire. Don't let him get close. Be careful, he's like the guys over there. Destroy the ship. Knock him down before he comes. Roha, who was standing above Vamana, watched the bullets hitting Vamana, and there was a trace of anger in his eyes. Bastard, dare to attack this king, really tired of living. 146 chapters Despairing Golden Glitter. Although the people of the beast pirates shot and fired very fiercely, with their backward firepower, let alone hurt Roha, it would be hard to make a hole on Vamana. But even so, a nameless fire rose from Roha's heart. The bastard, let this king die. Roha's eyes froze, and a strong killing intent appeared in his heart. The next moment, behind him, dozens of golden circles like water waves appeared, and within each circle, a weapon slowly stretched out. When seeing this scene, the pirates below inevitably fell into sluggishness. During the time of the fleet on the right, Hong Disaster looked at the golden light covering hundreds of square meters, his head buzzed, and his lips could not help trembling. From the beginning, the trace in his mind finally slowly overlapped with the person in his memory. How could Gilgamesh be here? Didn't you say that the only people to worry about are the Revolutionary Army and the Murlocs? Why is the Dimensional Brigade here? Recalling Kaido's evaluation of Gilgamesh and the deep-sea fault outside the capital of Seven Waters, the Flood was a little overwhelmed. Whether it is the strength shown in the comics or the depth of the deep-sea fault detected by the Intelligence Department, Gilgamesh is a proper four-emperor level powerhouse. In the face of this level of existence, how can they fight without Kaido? Like the Flood, everyone in the Beast Pirates also recognized Gilgamesh standing on Vamana. Immediately, despair spread throughout the entire fleet of beasts. The sound of guns gradually disappeared, and the entire fleet fell into a strange silence. Boom! At this moment, an explosion sounded. In the fleet on the left, two figures suddenly rushed out of the cabin of a dilapidated pirate ship, rushed to the deck, and stood opposite each other. One of them was wearing silver armor, holding an invisible sword, blonde hair, blue eyes, and an indifferent face. It was Arturia. On the other hand, Jack, who was opposite her, had a ferocious expression like a mad beast. Although he couldn't see any scars on his body, the bloodstains all over his body made everyone see that he had been cut long ago. Countless swords. The awakening of the animal fruit is really powerful, but Arturia, who can suppress Jack, is obviously better. No, Arturia. When the Flood Disaster saw Arturia, his face was even more like a concubine. Not only Gilgamesh but also Arturia. What the hell is going on? Could it be that there are people in the slave fleet that the Dimensional Brigade wants? Or, the main messenger behind the scenes is simply the Dimensional Brigade? Flood worked hard to sort out his chaotic thoughts and wanted to find a solution, but Roha on the other side ignored him at all. The overwhelming attack was launched instantly, and in the face of this group of ants who dared to offend him, Roha just wanted them to be wiped out. The next moment, the torrential rain fell. Whoosh whoosh. In an instant, the weapons in the golden halo shot at the pirate ship at Roha's feet. Facing the attack of Gilgamesh, known as the Four-Emperor level powerhouse, the pirates of the Beast's pirates were timid before they fought. It's the treasure of the king. Dodge. Jumping. Everyone jumping. Where's Lord Flood? Why hasn't Lord Flood come yet? Although the pirates of the 100 Beasts pirates have a very fast reaction speed, they are still too slow to deal with the weapons shot by the treasure of the king. Chi. With a shriek that pierced the air, the blade ruthlessly attacked the entire pirate ship. Facing such a large-scale attack, the pirates had no way to dodge. There are constantly pirates that are pierced by weapons and nailed to the ground. Even if occasionally a pirate successfully jumps into the sea, before he falls into the sea, he will be pierced by a sudden attacking weapon. Through it, it turned into a floating corpse at sea. Among the pirates on the ship, there are many people with a cadre-like appearance, trying to use the armed color domineering to resist the attack of the treasure of the king. However, in the next second, he will be completely beaten into a sieve. Ridiculous. Roja shook his head contemptuously. The weapons in the king's treasure are all legendary treasures, and their sharpness far exceeds that of the so-called supreme sword in this world. What's more, after the king's treasure was fired, the speed of the blade exceeded the speed of the bullet. How could such an attack be blocked by this scumbag? In just a few seconds, there was no sound on the pirate ship under Roja's feet, and the entire pirate ship was shot into a sieve and was slowly silent. Endless blood spread on the deck and flowed into the sea, dyeing a large area of the sea red. In the face of this attack like divine punishment, some people on the surrounding pirate ships even fell to their knees with their legs weak. Chapter 147 Gilgamesh's Pleasure. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. We're doomed. Someone knelt on the ground, holding his head, with a collapsed look on his face. How to fight? How to fight this? Seeing that even the cadres were beheaded like ants, everyone was desperate. How about we surrender? Someone suddenly suggested. Damn it. Suddenly a cadre came over and slapped the person who proposed to surrender to the ground. We are the beast pirates, how could it be possible to surrender? Even if you surrender today, Lord Kaido may let you go. What? No one knew that when the cadre taught his subordinates, the idea of surrender also appeared in his heart. Maybe, surrender really can survive. We can fake surrender. The man fell to the ground, covering his face, first looking at Roja, who was slowly turning his direction on the other side, and then at the flagship that was approaching at high speed in front of the right, with an excited tone. Let's fake surrender first, hold Gilgamesh for a while, wait until Lord Flood arrives, we can hold him back, and then inform Lord Kaido as soon as possible, won't we be able to live by then? Fake surrender. There was a hint of emotion in the cadre's eyes, and he quickly glanced at the flagship in the front right, and guessed in his heart. 10 minutes. As long as they hold on for another 10 minutes, Lord Flood on the right fleet will be able to arrive at 380. Because the beast pirates divided the fleet into 3, and Roja intercepted the last fleet, so far, the Flood has not arrived. Thinking of this, the cadre nodded quickly, just do it. Seeing that Roja had turned to their side, dozens of weapons were slowly stretched out, and the cadre shuddered, waved his arms quickly, and shouted. Surrender. We surrender. As he said that, he also kicked the stunned companion beside him, shout together. The pirates around reacted quickly, waving their arms frantically, and some even took off their clothes and waved their weapons. Surrender. Your lord, we surrender. My lord, we were wrong, please spare us, we surrender. Lord Gilgamesh, we surrender, we are willing to swear allegiance to you. The cadre of the beast pirates knelt down with a plop, opened his arms, and shouted to Roja in the sky. Surrender. Roja stood on the bow of Vimana, looking down at the pirates who looked at him with pleading eyes, and suddenly smiled. Yes, but I only accept the surrender of one person per ship. Quote. Hearing the first half of the sentence, the faces of the pirates suddenly showed joy, but when Roja finished speaking, everyone opened their mouths and looked at Roja in disbelief. Big, sir, what did you just say? The cadre stammered and asked. Kukai. A golden light flashed, blood spurted out, and the cadre looked at the gun barrel on his chest, his eyes full of despair and puzzlement. Why, cough. Before he could say a word, he spat out a large mouthful of blood and fell on the deck. This king has no habit of repeating words for ants. Roja glanced coldly at the pirates who were frozen in place, and hooked the corner of his mouth. Now, start, bastards, start your fight, kill your companions, and make this king feel happy. Why, we are companions, how can we kill each other? After someone heard Roja's words, a ridiculous expression appeared on their faces, but no one responded to him. Turning his head stiffly, he saw that his companions who had been drinking with him in the past were scattered around the deck one by one, watching each other vigilantly. "What are you doing? Do you really want to listen to him and kill each other? Lord Flood is coming, we just need to delay for a while, it'll be fine." The pirates screamed hysterically at their companions, but only received one indifferent look after another. "Why are you looking at me like this? We are companions." "Ku Kai." A sharp blade suddenly emerged from his chest, blocking the rest of his words back in his throat. The next second, the sharp blade suddenly retracted, and the pirate who killed his companion looked at his body gloomily. "I'm sorry, I want to live." Facing Gilgamesh and facing his companions, he chose the latter. But before he could pounce on the next person, a chopping axe suddenly slashed on his neck, beheading his head fiercely. The head full of blood rolled on the ground, and the eyes of the deceased could not rest, and were seen by everyone. "Must get started. If you don't do it, the next one to die is yourself. Kill everyone, and there will be a chance to survive. If you don't kill it, you will definitely die." Such an idea appeared in the minds of all people, that is, they knew that their chances of surviving were very slim, but they couldn't even lift their breaths to face Gilgamesh. "Ah, I don't know who it is," waving a long knife and rushing towards the companion beside him. The next moment everyone went crazy. The fight begins here. Countless pirates who once fought side by side began to kill each other on their decks. Even if some people don't want to hurt their companions, they often fall into a bloody quagmire because they rescue their besieged friends. One of them kept jumping into the sea and trying to escape. But they forgot that in addition to the giant fish that smelled blood, there were also murlocs. These darlings of the sea, since Gilgamesh appeared, have been cautiously wandering in the distance of the fleet, for fear of causing Gilgamesh's hostility. But now, some of the pirates jumped into the sea to swim, and Gilgamesh didn't care, and the murloc's mind suddenly became active. After pinching to death the first pirate who swam 100 meters away in the sea, the murlocs glanced timidly at Gilgamesh, and after confirming that the other party didn't even look at them, the murlocs' faces burst into unison. A hideous smile appeared. "I can finally avenge my comrades." On the boat, the pirates fought madly. Under the boat, the fish in the sea were like sharks smelling blood, ruthlessly devouring the pirates that fell into the water one after another. Looking at several pirate ships that were in chaos and slaughter, a bloody smile appeared on Roja's face. "That's it, show your despicableness to your heart's content, and kill everyone in order to survive." Chapter 148 Bastards Should Shut Up. On the deck of the fleet on the right, the Flood was anxiously walking around on the deck, looking at the several pirate ships that stopped in the distance, and Gilgamesh floating above them. His eyes were full of unease. For some reason, from just now, his right eyelid began to twitch wildly, and even his heart became extremely heavy. "How's the situation?" Flood looked up and asked the lookout above. However, the watchman standing above seemed to be immobilized, holding a telescope, motionless, and did not respond to the Flood. It was not until Flood Disaster asked again that the lookout hand trembled and took down the telescope with a horrified expression on his face. They are killing each other." "What are you talking about?" Hong Jin raised his brows, a little disbelieving what he heard. But at this moment, the lookout suddenly screamed and pointed forward. "Gilgamesh is here." "What?" Flood Disaster quickly turned around and saw that in the distant sky, the golden flying boat actually moved, and was heading towards them at a very fast speed. In just 10 seconds, the golden flying boat had stopped above them. Looking at Roja's blood-red eyes, the Flood couldn't help but tremble, but he still braved the front and walked to the front. "Lord Gilgamesh, our beast pirates seem to have no grievances with your brigade. It seems that there is no need to make trouble like this." With that said, Flood looked at the fleet where Jack was. At this time, only 3 pirate ships were left in the left fleet, and the rest had been tragically destroyed in the aftermath of the battle between Arturia and Jack. The corners of his mouth twitched painfully, and the Flood looked up at Roja again. "As long as you and your Excellency Arturia retreat, I can make the decision, and this time, it will not happen, how about it? Otherwise, Kaido will take a while. It's hard to say when your lord comes back. Quote. Floods accentuated the tone of the word, Kaido. If in the past, Roha might have nodded in appreciation when he saw the flood disaster dealt with things like this. There is evidence to advance and retreat, respect without losing dignity, know how to choose, and maintain a respectful attitude without too serious threats, which can be regarded as a standard retreat from the enemy. Unfortunately, what he met today was Roha, who transformed into Gilgamesh. What responded to him was a spear that fell from the sky. Boom! On the deck of the pirate ship, a large hole was blown out in an instant. Looking at the hole in front of him, there was a trace of cold sweat on Hong Xian's face. If he hadn't flashed so fast just now, he would have been headshot by now. When is a bastard like you worthy of negotiating terms with this king? Roha's indifferent voice came from the sky, and at the same time as his voice, there were nearly 100 golden ripples. It seems like an endless circle of light, spreading out in a ring behind Roha, filling everyone's field of vision. Looking at the weapons one after another stretched out in the aperture, feeling the terrifying power above the weapons, the flood disaster pupil suddenly shrank into a small dot. Looking up at the sky, he shouted at Roha, Your Excellency. Do you really want to be the enemy of Lord Kaido? Don't worry, I'll send him down to accompany you soon. Roha put his hands around his chest and raised his head slightly. Now, you will die for this king. As soon as the voice fell, the nearly 100 apertures behind Roha started to attack violently as if they had been ordered by the king. For this fleet with the flood disaster as the backbone, Roha has been preparing to crush them with absolute strength from the very beginning. Boundless, the shrieks resounded between the heavens and the earth, and countless treasures poured out of the king's treasure as if they didn't want money. The screams of killing, connected into one piece, shaking the entire sea area. On the other side, the battle between Arturia and Jack has also reached a fever pitch. Boom! It was another fierce collision, and the pirate ship under his feet could no longer withstand the aftermath of the battle between the two, and shattered. Arturia and Jack jumped up one after another. People were in the air, but they were still fighting. After fighting for a few tricks, Arturia's sword and Jack's machete collided violently, and the two flew backwards. Jack rolled in the air, and finally stood on a pirate ship with a promoted chassis, and stood still. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught a glimpse of the flood disaster. When he saw the light and rain that filled the sky, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Especially when he saw the flood that turned into a prehistoric giant crocodile, and was beaten by Roha's flesh and blood, a look of horror appeared in his eyes. It's Gilgamesh, even he's here. Jack's heart showed a hint of retreat. Just now, I was busy fighting with Arturia, and I didn't have time to estimate the surroundings. Unexpectedly, even Gilgamesh, who was called the Fourth Emperor by Lord Kaido, came. What is this fight? Chapter 149 Sword of Oath of Victory. It's time to go, Jack whispered. At this moment, a gust of wind suddenly came in front of him. Unprepared, Jack didn't have time to dodge, so he could only bend down and squat to resist. At the same time, the muscles on his arms arched suddenly, allowing Arturia to take the opportunity to dash forward. However, the expected attack did not come until the gale dissipated. What's the matter? There was a bad premonition in Jack's heart, and he raised his head and looked left and right. Seeing this, he suddenly took a deep breath. Around him, all the driftwood was blown away by the gust of wind just now, and even a few smashed boats were blown into the distance. What the hell? Jack stared at Arturia in the distance with a heavy expression. In the moment just now, Arturia actually flashed 100 meters away. Woo! After glancing at Jack in the distance, after confirming that it was impossible for him to suddenly rush to her side, Arturia let out a deep breath. The next moment, she held the sword in both hands and raised it high above her head. That's it. Seeing this action, Jack's pupils shrank, and a terrifying picture instantly appeared in his mind. That is a beam of light that penetrates the sky and the earth, and is known as the existence of Arturia's strongest noble phantasm. The Sword of Oath Victory. Not good. Jack trembled and wanted to hide back, but behind him there was sea water. Everything that could be stepped on was just blown away by Arturia. At this moment, a depressing breath suddenly came from behind Jack. He turned around in a hurry, and the scene in front of him made Jack stunned in place. Light, countless lights filled his eyes. The sea, the air, the land, endless rays of light appeared from everywhere, flying like fireflies, and finally converged on the sword in Arturia's hand. The magic power that was enough to amaze the strongest magician gushed out of Arturia's body, and its power was so powerful that even the space around her was fluctuating. When the magic power accumulated on the Sword of Promised Victory reached its peak, Arturia also opened her eyes. Under the endless rays of light, the green eyes are dazzling, showing the domineering aura that belongs to the king. Already prepared. Excalibur. Accompanied by Arturia's cry, the Sword of Victory of the oath that was raised abruptly swung down. Boom. The deafening roar even overwhelmed the screams that had been echoing in this sea area. Endless magic power poured out, turned into a golden torrent, unfolded the sea, and rushed towards the helpless Jack. The sea was whimpering, the air was shaking, and the beam of light was exuding fiery high temperature, burning the boundless sea, and the vast mist rose and was broken by the golden torrent. In this world without restraint, the power of the Sword of Oath of Victory is more than doubled. Faced with this devastating power, Jack only blocked it for a moment before being mercilessly engulfed. The golden torrent remains unabated, and continues to move forward. Wherever it passes, it will cut through thorns and destroy anything that dares to stand in its way. When the golden light gradually dissipated, the Sword of Victory of the oath in Arturia's hand was once again covered up by the Wind King's barrier. After taking a deep breath, Arturia looked forward with satisfaction. At this time, in the sea in front of her, Jack's figure had long since disappeared, and even the only two remaining pirate ships behind Jack had disappeared. The other ship rubbed the edge of the Sword of Oath Victory and avoided it, but only 1/3 of its volume disappeared, as well as the crew on it. The Sword of Oath of Victory. This power is beyond expectations. Roja glanced in amazement, and a trace of anticipation emerged in his heart for the result of the Sword of Oath of Victory. A++ level, the Sword of Victory for the noble phantasm of the city can smash like this. Then how terrifying his X level, the star of the world's deviation from the noble phantasm. Try to Kaido later. Roja hooked the corner of his mouth, the strongest creature in the world. I don't know if I can resist the star of his heaven and earth deviation. Controlling Vimana, Roja flew in the direction of the slave fleet. Behind him, the former flood disaster fleet has long ceased to exist, and the flood disaster, one of the 3 disasters, has become the ration of sharks. Facing the treasure of the king, how dare you turn into a giant crocodile, is it too slow to die? That was ordered by 1.3 Roja to kill each other. Several blood-covered pirates struggled to raise their heads, and looked at Roja who passed by in the sky with empty and dead eyes. For these last surviving guys, Roja was not even interested in taking a look at them. Since it was the king's promise, he would certainly keep it and accept their surrender. However, how long they can live with their injuries is a question. What's more, at their feet, a Murloc warrior is climbing up. Chapter 150 Kaido, please this king. Roja took the lead in taking Vimana to the direction of the slave fleet. In the battle just now, they took advantage of the chaos of the beast pirates, but they ran a long way. During this period, Arturia stepped on the sea and caught up with him, and the two boarded the deck together. Lord Gilgamesh, Lord Arturia, thank you for your help. It was Tiger who stayed behind to greet him. As the person who proposed to rescue Marijoya's slaves, a part of the Sun Pirates and the top leaders of the Revolutionary Army, of course, know that there is a part of the Dimensional Brigade in the slave fleet. But the slaves behind them did not know that these people looked at Roja and the two with awe and anticipation. It's been a while since the Crimson Eyes were cut, and the queen who commanded them was also recognized by them. It was Estes in the comics. That mean, Estes is also a member of the Dimension Brigade. Thinking that there may be a Dimensional Brigade as a backer, everyone couldn't help but feel a little excited. What about Estes and Drago? Roja didn't pay attention to them, but asked a little eagerly. Even if Estes and Drago have the strength of generals, they still don't know what the result will be against Kaido. If Estes is injured, 11 will be a big deal this time. Tiger was stunned for a moment, and then quickly pointed in one direction. They led Kaido over there, saying they wanted to find a more open place to fight. Well, Roja nodded, turned and jumped on Vamana. Arturia next to her just wanted to jump up, but Roja stopped her. Arturia. You treat the wounded here. Roja shook his head and pointed to the wounded all over the deck. I'm going. Arturia raised her eyebrows, looked at Roja stubbornly, and did not give in. If Estes is injured, I can help her heal, and there is an ideal country to protect me and Ace. Day, you don't have to worry about anything else. Roja was silent for a while, then silently extended his hand to Arturia. Come. Okay. Arturia was overjoyed, and was pulled by Roja to Vamana. The two quickly disappeared into the sky. Just after Roja and the two left, there was a sudden burst of loud cheers on the extremely quiet slave fleet because of Gilgamesh's deterrence. Survived. We actually survived. I thought we were dead, but I didn't expect to survive. Thanks to Gilgamesh and Lord Arturia. They are our benefactors. Pi. Yes, the strength of these two adults is really incredible. That legendary Sea of Beasts thieves group, they actually let them annihilate like this. It's just too strong. When I watched the two of them fight, I was in a cold sweat. If I went up, I would be dead in an instant. The topic of the ship gradually turned from the excitement of the aftermath to the worship of Gilgamesh. Whether it was the sword of vowed victory or the treasure of the king, it opened the eyes of this group of people, and some even wanted to follow them. This is a world that worships force, and it is the dream of most people to be under the command of a strong man like Gilgamesh. Okay, don't get excited. Tiger clapped his hands and looked at everyone with a smile on his face. Everyone, hurry up and pack up and carry the injured to the cabin. The rest of the people are sailing, and we will find them a safe place to wait for Estes to come back. Oh tilde. Everyone on the deck suddenly became busy. On the other side, Roja and Arturia finally approached the target after flying for more than 10 minutes. On the distant sea level, a huge island gradually appeared. According to preliminary estimates, this island is at least hundreds of square kilometers. The island is full of mountains and dense forests. It can be called a paradise. However, at this time, above this paradise, there was a blank area that was nearly a kilometer wide and more than 10 kilometers long. The whole island, as if being pushed by someone with a fader, became extremely ugly. In this blank area, tens of thousands of heavenly trees fell to the ground, and the corpses of countless animals fell and whined in it, an apocalyptic scene. Looking at the blank space opened up by the battle of the three of Estes, Roja couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This is the power of the world's top powerhouses to fight. It took less than an hour to fight, and it has already caused such terrifying destructive power. If it takes a few days, I am afraid that this giant island will be wiped off the map. Looking up, Roja could easily feel the momentum released by the battle of the three. One of them is icy and biting, arrogant and domineering. It is the momentum of Estes. The other is mysterious and obscure, and it is also Dorag. And the momentum in their center, touching it slightly, Roja couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Violent, arrogant, confident, and domineering, all kinds of imposing manners are intertwined, giving Roja a feeling like an overlord coming into the world. As if feeling the domineering in this momentum, Roja's heart suddenly raised a trace of unhappiness. That is the pride of being the oldest king, no one can suppress him. Feeling the unhappiness in his heart, Roja no longer endured, and his red eyes suddenly widened. The next moment, a domineering arrogance that dominates the world instantly emanated from his body, sweeping across the sky and the ground, in all directions. Boom! Invisible ripples spread to the surroundings, sweeping out like a tsunami. The terrifying overlord domineering look instantly enveloped the entire island. The noisy archipelago suddenly fell into a strange silence because of the three people fighting. Gilgamesh's aura of kingship, coupled with Roha's domineering arrogance, completely suppressed the creatures on the entire island in an instant. Roar! A roar sounded as if the ancient giant beast was angered suddenly, and endless wind and waves suddenly emanated from the center of the battle. Wherever they passed, the grass was low, and the sand was flying. The next moment, along with the trembling of the entire island, an incomparably huge figure suddenly jumped high from the center of the battle. This jump was nearly 100 meters high. This tall and burly, muscular body with knots, a giant like a hill, in midair, looked in the direction of Roha from a distance, and in his eyes, killing intent was Lingran. The crimson eyes met Kaido's violent eyes, and Roha's eyes flashed with fiery fighting intent. That's right, only this kind of power is worthy of this king's noble phantasm. Only by killing such an enemy will we not insult the prestige of the deviants of heaven and earth. Kaido, do your best and let this king enjoy the joy of battle. Chapter 151 Estes with two boats. Die. With a roar that pierced through the sky, Kaido, who was in midair, suddenly twisted his body and retracted his legs, and made a kick gesture. Afterwards, Kaido's right leg was pulled out like a steel whip, causing a burst of air. A half-moon energy that was dozens of meters long suddenly shot out of his legs and slashed towards Roha at extreme speed. Facing the attack that was enough to cut off several skyscrapers in his previous life, Roha sat on the throne without moving. Artoria, who had been standing by his side, guarding like a knight, suddenly took a step forward, facing the half-moon energy, and slashed out with a sword. Boom! Arturia's azure sword Chi and Banyu Chi collided in the sky, making a harsh noise, and then the two Chi disappeared one after another, and a strong wind turbulence erupted in the air. A move similar to Lanzhou. Roha raised his eyebrows, showing an expression of interest. Speaking of which, he has been in the world of pirates for so long, and he has not yet learned the famous six-style navy. Go back and let Shadow get it and learn to play. Roha thought so and slowly stood up. In the high sky in the distance, Kaido's figure began to fall, and below him, two figures suddenly rose from the ground, one left and one right, appearing in front of Kaido. The ice bloomed, the hurricane roared, and the two general-level powerhouses suddenly launched an attack with all their strength, attacking Kaido straight. Go away. Kaido glared at him, his arms suddenly turned pitch black, and his fists attacked at the same time, facing him with an overwhelming momentum. Boom! The huge explosion sounded again, and with just one blow, Kaido broke the attack of the two. The gust of wind brought by the fist force then blew the two of Estes backwards. Estes is flying back dozens of meters after that. He stretched out his hand and summoned a column of ice, and stood firmly on it. On the other side, Drago didn't know what to lean on, and stopped in the air strangely. Gilgamesh. Estes had already noticed Roha who came, and when he saw Roha's first glance, he couldn't help but be stunned. But soon, after seeing Roha's eyes, Estes suddenly rejoiced, swept away the gloomy expression before, revealing a smile like sunshine. Roha. Estes jumped onto Vamana with a rub, and just wanted to jump into Roha's arms, but after seeing Gilgamesh's appearance, he stopped. Thank you for your hard work. Roha rubbed Estes' hair, looked at Estes' slightly embarrassed look, and wiped the dust off her face with some distress. Leave it to me next. I'm with you. Estes glanced at Kaido, who was slowly walking towards this side, and stood beside Roha. This guy is very strong. Let's deal with him together. I said I will come, and the woman will stay. Roha pulled Estes behind him mercilessly, with a domineering look on his face. Suddenly being treated like this, Estes couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, then showed a little woman-like expression and nodded heavily. Only in the face of Roja, the queen will soften. Drago, who was on the side, also came to Vamana when he saw this. He looked at Estes, who looked like a little woman, and Roja, who looked at Gilgamesh. Not dare to say it. In the end, I could only sigh silently in my heart. Your regiment is really messed up. Roja won't fight Gilgamesh because of this woman, right? Drago thought strangely. Neither Drago nor Estes noticed that because of Roja's arrival, the pressure that had been deposited in their hearts was quietly disappearing, as if they had found a backbone to shield them from the wind and rain. Gilgamesh. Kaido's deep and grand voice came from a distance. So that's the case. I thought the Revolutionary Army had such courage before. It seems that your Dimensional Brigade is the one who stole my things. Bed bugs. Quote. Steal your stuff. Roja sneered. Kaido, what the king wants, just go and get it. Why do you say that? Boring. Kaido shook his head and glanced coldly at the crowd on Vimalakirti. Is there only 4 of them? If there are other people, call them out together. Don't come out one by one and make people irritated. Upset. Brainless warrior, it's enough to deal with your king alone. There was a trace of disdain in Roja's eyes, and he swung back with one hand. Estes and Arturia suddenly understood, jumped off Vamana one after another, and evacuated towards the distance. Seeing this, Drago was stunned for a moment, then took a deep look at Roja, and left Vamana, but he did not go far, but floated in the air, looking at this side from a distance. He still finds it hard to believe that Gilgamesh actually wants to go one-on-one with Kaido. Crazy. Chapter 152 Fight Kaido. Just you. Kaido looked up at Roja in the sky, and even he couldn't help showing a stunned expression. How many years? How many years? No one dared to talk to him like that. One-on-one. Even if it is as strong as the world government, in the face of his attack, a group of strong people swarmed up, not daring to have any contempt. Even the 4 Emperor's pirates, which is as famous as him, never provokes him. Now, this guy who looks golden, actually intends to have a one-on-one contest with him. Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Kaido suddenly laughed wildly, even laughing to the point of laughter. After a full tens of seconds, he stood up straight and looked up at Roja. Have you finished laughing? Roja looked down at Kaido. I haven't met an interesting guy like you for a long time. Kaido smiled grimly. Let me see if you can beat my capital. 867. This king never intended to defeat you from the beginning. Roja said suddenly. Huh, Kaido frowned, and a look of contempt appeared on his face. It hasn't started yet, so you're cowardly. Because, this king's purpose from the very beginning was to turn you into ashes. The depressing domineering like a mountain blooms from Roja's body, like a king's landing, looking down on the world. At the same time, dozens of golden ripples appeared behind Roja, and a handle noble phantasm slowly stretched out from the magic circle. Is more weapons useful? Kaido shouted angrily, and his body instantly turned pitch black. With a bow of his legs, the ground beneath his feet suddenly burst, and the next moment, Kaido rose from the ground and went straight to Roja. On his trampled ground, a huge crater even appeared. Weapons. Roja sneered and snapped his fingers. And then, the humming sound of the bees sounded, and gradually evolved into a harsh whistling. The torrential rain is falling. Chi. Countless noble phantasms fell from the sky and collided head-on with Kaido who was rushing towards him. Ding 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 ding. The sound of the symphony of gold and iron continued to sound, hitting Kaido, and a dense burst of sparks broke out. Although it did not cause actual damage to Kaido, it still restrained most of his rising momentum. Is that the only way? Kaido sneered, stepping on the soles of his feet in the air, and the speed picked up again. Only this kind of power, even my armament color is domineering. PFF'd. The sound of piercing the flesh was so clear in the endless symphony of gold and iron, a stunned expression appeared on Kaido's face. Looking at the heavy sword stuck in his thigh, there was a trace of uncontrollable horror in his eyes. His arrogance and arrogance were actually broken like this. Ignorance. Roha sneered when looking at Kaido, who showed flaws in his movements, and the treasure of the king behind him continued to attack. The noble phantasms in the king's treasure are also divided into 3, 6, and 9 grades. Low-level noble phantasms cannot defeat Kaido's extreme armed domineering, as long as Roha expected. Only those high-level noble phantasms mixed with low-level noble phantasms are the real killer moves. At this time, Kaido had also discovered the secret of Roha's attack, and various wounds appeared frequently on his body, and he could no longer maintain the momentum of rushing towards Roha. Damn, Kaido scolded, stepping on the air, and actually began to dodge to the side. However, when he just stepped out, the action was actually half a beat slower than he expected. Chi chi chi. A torrential attack followed, and Kaido was covered in blood. What's the matter? Kaido frowned, hurriedly accelerated, and dodged to the side. At this time, he realized that he didn't know when. A thick layer of frost actually appeared on the bend of his leg, and he could vaguely see the frozen tendon inside. It's the sword just now. Kaido instantly recalled that the epee that hit this part just now was sharper than the previous weapon. Kaido, who suddenly felt a little pressure in his heart, checked his whole body while dodging and resisting Roha's attack. Seeing this, it cast a shadow on his heart, and there were special wounds of varying degrees on his body. Some wounds seemed to be burnt by raging flames, some wounds seemed to be corroded by virulent poison, and even more wounds contained a unique energy, preventing him from self-healing. Damn, there's something wrong with those weapons. Kaido frowned, looking at the weapons that were shot, becoming more cautious. Finally found. Roha hooked the corner of his mouth. Noble phantasm, without some special abilities, how can it be considered a noble phantasm? Even if Roha does not have the ability to liberate them, the passive abilities and attribute attacks of these noble phantasms alone can make Kaido drink a pot. Chapter 153 Fly Kaido Kite. Boom. Kaido finally landed on the ground, looking at Roha who looked contemptuous in the sky. His heart was burning with anger. The brat who only plays tricks. For decades, Kaido had never experienced his own attack, and it felt like he was beaten back. This kind of insult made his eyes instantly filled with a lot of bloodshot and red. Today, I must crush you. His chest was ups and downs, countless blue veins burst out on the muscles all over his body, and Kaido's wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, Kaido's body was no longer scarred. This is the real reason why he is known as the Undead Kaido, far beyond the healing ability of the awakening of the animal system. Angry. I see how long you can dance. Roha smiled lightly, and behind him, the golden ripples gradually increased. After a while, there was even a sea-like scene above the sky. Boundless ripples appeared behind Roha, fluctuating endlessly, flashing dazzling golden light. Countless noble phantasms slowly protruded out, connecting into one piece, like a neat army erecting spears. The treasure of the king, fully open. At this time, Kaido on the ground, I do not know when, has already covered the whole body with armed color. He, who was already huge, was like a giant of steel at this time, and the ground under his feet even had a deep depression. Seeing the golden light in the sky, Kaido not only did not have any timidity, but became even more violent. That's it, that's it. He finally found the feeling that he used to fight desperately. Fight today, never die. Chi chi chi. Roha didn't have the mind to ink with Kaido, and the noble phantasms in the sky suddenly shot out. On the ground, Kaido opened his mouth wide, showing his white teeth, and roared excitedly. Boom. His hands slammed into the ground, shaking slightly. The next moment, a piece of ground as huge as a hill was lifted up by Kaido and hurled into the sky. Woo! The rock and soil weighing dozens of tons brought a low wind whistle and rushed towards the countless noble phantasms. In just a few seconds, the hill-like rock and soil had been shattered, but Kaido also took advantage of the momentum and rushed out dozens of meters into the sky. As long as there is another 100 meters, he will be able to touch Roha. However, just after Kaido broke through the rock, his fists kept hitting, and after blasting away the noble phantasm, he found that Roha had actually risen again. Shameless. Kaido's face suddenly darkened. He had never seen such a shameless guy. With such a strong strength, you still come to this set. Silly beep, I'm a bow rank, fighting with you in melee. My brain is broken. Looking at Kaido's face, Roha knew what he was thinking. Kaido's upward momentum was once again curbed by Roha, but this time, when he fell, several golden circles suddenly appeared around him. This is... Kaido's eyes narrowed, and a strong sense of crisis suddenly rose in his heart. If you can't avoid it, you're in trouble. Kaido subconsciously wanted to dodge to the side, but Roha moved faster than him. Whoa! A chain of golden chains suddenly shot out of the magic circle and wrapped around Kaido's body like a snake. In just a few seconds, a dozen laps were mixed on his body. Skylock. Kaido's pupils shrank suddenly. Even though he wasn't interested in Dream Magazine's comics, he still forced himself to read some in order to gather information. Among them, the demigod Hercules, who had a similar fighting style to him, left a deep impression on him, and Hercules was bound by the chain of heaven, and was finally shot to death by Gilgamesh. Open it for me, Kaido shouted, his whole body suddenly exerting strength. However, the strength enough to break the steel rope only loosened the lock of the sky a little, but it did not appear to be broken at all. Sure enough, in the face of a guy without divinity, the ability of the sky lock is not enough. Roha looked at Kaido, who was struggling, and silently estimated the bearing time of the sky lock in his heart. 30 seconds. It only takes 30 seconds for Kaido to unlock the lock of the sky. Enough. Roha chuckled, flipped his wrist, and clenched his palm in the void. The next moment, a mysterious formation appeared in his palm, and a peculiarly shaped sword slowly appeared in his hand. This sword does not have the blade that a sword should have. Instead, the entire sword body is cylindrical, and the top of the sword body is covered with red lines. When Roha raised the sword, the entire sword body began to rotate slowly. Deviant's sword Aya. X rank, the opponent's noble phantasm. It is also Gilgamesh's most powerful noble phantasm. Once Roha used the fragments of Gilgamesh, used this unparalleled noble phantasm, and destroyed the sea area dozens of miles with a sword. And now, incarnated as a complete Gilgamesh, he will unleash the true power of this noble phantasm. There is no restraint to suppress, the real power of destroying the world. Chapter 154 Heaven and Earth Mutation. As that noble phantasm, seeing the sword in Roha's hand, Kaido's pupils suddenly shrank into a small dot. Anyone who has read the Holy Grail Wars comics will not forget Gilgamesh's deviating sword. Damn chains. Kaido struggled frantically, and even he was not sure of surviving the attack of the deviant's sword. He wanted to ask for death, but he would never accept this kind of death method of being killed by a single sword without even hitting the opponent from the beginning to the end. What an insult to him. The chain of heaven that bound Kaido was rattled by his struggle, but how could the chain of heaven, known as armed against God, be broken free so easily? At this time, the magic power in the sky that was repressed from the bottom of my heart finally gathered. That's the feeling. Feeling the terrifyingly huge power on the deviated sword, Roha couldn't help but take a deep breath. This kind of power that can destroy the world with the wave of a hand is really intoxicating. Kaido, you should be honored that you are the first person in this world to truly feel the power of the deviated sword. Roha sneered, slowly raised the deviant's sword in his hand, and let the magic power that filled the whole sky be released arbitrarily. Before the real attack started, the huge magic power on the deviant's sword had already disturbed the entire sky. Above the sky, countless thick clouds gathered together at some point, revolving slowly around the magic power emanating from the deviant's sword, covering this island with hundreds of square kilometers. Among the clouds, from time to time, pitch-black lightning as thick as a bucket erupted, with a roar that shook the world. A violent gust of wind suddenly blew from a distance, with a trace of eerie black, whimpering over the island. The ocean current near the island suddenly accelerated, and countless undercurrents and whirlpools appeared, gradually swallowing the island. Pi. The deviated sword Shangzu was truly liberated, but it has already changed. The surrounding celestial phenomena made the whole island look like it was about to face the end of the world. On the ground, countless beasts fled desperately, gathered into a torrent, desperately escaped towards the edge of the island. Jumping off a cliff, falling into the sea, drilling into the ground, countless creatures would rather die in the ocean than leave here. Instinct from the depths of biological genes tells them that they must escape, the farther the better. At this time, on the edge of the island, Arturia, Estes, and Drago stared at the vision between heaven and earth in stunned eyes. Seeing this scene like the end of the world, their minds went blank. Is this the power of Gilgamesh? Estes widened his eyes, his proud face full of fear. Even if she is too strong, she will not be able to raise any resistance in the face of this kind of power that completely crushes her. Drago on the other side couldn't maintain his high cold temperament either. He opened his mouth without image, widened his eyes, and looked at Gilgamesh in the sky. The thoughts in his mind were chaotic. Gilgamesh is so strong. This kind of power is actually just a cadre. How strong is the leader of the Dimensional Brigade? If this sword hits Mary Joa, will the revolution be half successful? No wonder Gilgamesh dares to compete with Roha for women. With this kind of strength, what can I get? Drago didn't know what he was thinking at all, he was completely thinking about it, in order to resolve the fear in his heart. At this moment, a flash of inspiration flashed in Drago's mind, and he suddenly shuddered, turning his head to look at Arturia and the two. Can Gilgamesh control the power of the Deviant's sword? No, the two women shook their heads at the same time. Then what are we waiting for if we don't go? Drago jumped up suddenly, the Deviant's sword in the original book, but the attack that destroys everything. They are under the Deviant's sword now. If they don't leave, are they courting death? Mr. Drago, calm down. Arturia gave a stern look at Drago, whose image was shattered. I'm here for this, so I don't have to worry about safety. At this moment, the whole world suddenly stopped. The wind no longer howled, the thunder no longer roared, and even the leaves on the giant trees around him no longer floated. Come on. 2.1 Arturia's eyes narrowed, and she quickly summoned a blue and white scabbard, unfolding the barrier. The scabbard of the Sword of the Oath of Victory. A faraway ideal country. Is the same X-class noble phantasm as the Deviant's sword EA. The wielder will heal from any injury, and even the progression of aging will stop, and if its true name is released, the strongest defensive barrier will be deployed. Anyone in the enchantment will not be subject to any physical interference from the outside world, parallel world interference, and multi-dimensional mutual communication. It is an absolute defense. Chapter 155 The Star of Heaven and Earth Deviation. Die, Kaido, Roha murmured in a low voice, and the stray sword in his hand swung down. Taste the first power of the world. The noisy world suddenly fell silent, as if it had lost all its vitality before this mighty force that destroyed the world. The next moment, everything started to fall apart. The huge island that has nurtured countless creatures first began to collapse, and cracks with a length of dozens of kilometers appeared on the island, criss-crossing, and in just a few seconds, they had spread all over the island. Rumble, _. I don't know how many tons of sand and soil began to collapse towards the dark crack, and the overwhelming seawater streamed in, gradually submerging this collapsed island. Thousands of meters deep on the seabed, cliff-like cracks appeared silently one after another, and countless seawater poured into the cracks. On the sea surface, dozens of huge vortexes with a diameter of several kilometers appeared, and the sound like muffled thunder continued to sound from the bottom of the vortex, like an ancient giant beast, constantly swallowing at the bottom of the vortex. The power of the Deviant's sword continues to spread to the surroundings. Wherever the power that destroys the heavens and the earth passes, the heavens and the earth collapse, and all things fall into eternal sleep. At this time, in the place where the chain of heaven was once bound, Kaido had long since disappeared, and only a dark crack that was dozens of meters long remained in the sky. It was the space rift formed by the deviant's sword slicing through the space. I don't know whether Kaido was swallowed by the space rift or destroyed by the deviant's sword. Staring deeply at the space crack, Roha slowly retracted the deviant's sword. Even if the liberation of Roha's deviant's sword is over, the aftermath of it is far from over. The surrounding sea was still fluctuating, and there was a constant roar from the bottom of the sea. At the foot of Roha at this time, the former giant island has long lost its original appearance. On the island, there are dozens of crisscrossed, bottomless cliffs, and it is even said that the highest point of the entire island is where cut below sea level. Countless seawater kept pouring into the cliffs of the island, but for more than a minute, Roha hadn't seen the rising water. Except for the island that was about to disappear, all the places that Roha could see were affected by the deviated sword. A giant island disappeared, several small islands fell apart, the submarine continental shelf was reconstructed, and countless submarine cliffs were formed. The ecological environment of this huge sea area has been completely changed by Roha's blow. However, these are only minor dangers. The real danger is the countless dark cracks in the kilometer space around Roha. Back quote. Looking at a long and narrow crack that is 2 meters long and several centimeters wide beside him, Roha's eyes have a curious look. This was the first time he saw a space crack. Degree M. As soon as the mind moved, a golden magic circle appeared on Roha's side. Then, a sword-shaped noble phantasm shot out and slammed into the space crack. Scoff. There was no explosion, no vision, and the noble phantasm that was placed in the hand of the heroic spirit, which was enough to reach the B level, was silently cut off by the crack in the space. When Roha chased after him and retrieved the noble phantasm, the sword body several centimeters wide even disappeared from the noble phantasm. It is the depth of the crack in Nadao space. This is a little troublesome. Roha looked at the surrounding space cracks and scratched his head in distress. Although he was very satisfied with the power of the deviant's sword, he didn't want to beat the surrounding space like this. You don't have to think about it, and the reason why the hole has not been filled yet, it is estimated that there are many space cracks in it that are swallowing seawater. Although the amount swallowed is insignificant to the sea of this world, it is still an eyesore. System, is there a way to solve these space cracks? There is no need to worry about the host, the world where the host is located, the crystal wall of the plane is stable, there is no sign of weakness, and the self-healing ability is still there. It is expected that within a few months, these space cracks will gradually shrink and then disappear completely. That's it. Roha nodded. Since he could heal himself, it would be fine. Manipulating Vimana to turn his head, Roha saw the 3 Artorias standing on the sea ice at a glance. Are you all right? As soon as Roha landed on the ice, Estes eagerly stepped up and looked at Roha's body. Artoria on the side, although not as active as Estes, still looked at him with concern. Your Excellency Gilgamesh, this is over, can we go back to the fleet? Drago came over and asked Roha in a respectful tone. In his eyes, he could vaguely see a cohesion that persisted. Of fear. For Gilgamesh's power, he was completely convinced. With that sword, it can be called destroying everything, and even Kaido, known as the strongest creature in the world, was instantly killed. You know, he is very proud to be able to fight with Kaido a few times, but now, Kaido is actually killed by life in front of him. How is this even going to be played? It's not a dimensional power at all. With this kind of power, why do you still open a comic book club, go directly to Mary Joa, and slash down with a sword? How dare the world government dare to jump? What 103 Drago didn't know was that Roha really had this idea after seeing the power of the Deviant's sword. With a sword on the Red Soil continent, how dare the world government not cooperate with itself? But let's finish the matter at hand first. Shaking his head, Roha drove Vimana to fly in the direction of the slave fleet with a few people. Knowing that Roha and the others left a few hours later, several naval warships arrived late and appeared on the sea level. The head of a warship, the bow is a huge dog's head, it is Garp's flagship. On his left and right sides are the flagships of Kizaru and Crane, respectively. Garp stood on the bow, looking at the tumbling sea to the left and right, and a broken island in the distance, his expression extremely solemn. What the hell is going on here? Garp had a vague feeling that he had missed something vital. As early as when the Beast Pirates launched their search, the Navy headquarters had already begun to monitor the movements of the Beast Pirates. When the Beast Pirates suddenly accelerated and intercepted the slave fleet, Sengoku immediately notified Garp. But the distance is too far. Even if Garp and the others have accelerated to the limit, it is still too late. Chapter 156 The Adventures of Garp and the Kiwi. Just when Garp was thinking, a messenger suddenly ran to Garp's side and saluted and reported. Lieutenant General Garp, there are several giant whirlpools ahead, and the warship cannot bypass it, please instruct. Vortex. Garp raised his eyebrows and nodded immediately. Understood, drop the anchor, the fleet will dock here. The heavy anchor was quickly dropped by the soldiers, and Crane and Kyabu, who learned of Garp's order, quickly came to Garp's flagship. Cap, what are you going to do? Crane asked. I'll have a look myself. Garp replied casually as he took off his navy cloak. Hearing Garp's words, Crane frowned slightly, and immediately stretched out. All right, but let Kizaru accompany you. Okay, if something happens to the fleet, you must send the signal flares as soon as possible, and Kizaru and I will be back. Yeah, Crane nodded. A few minutes later, Garp and Kizaru left the fleet in a small boat. When passing through the maelstrom, Kizaru took the lead in turning into light and flew into the distance, while Garp stepped on the air and crossed the vortex with his boat. When they crossed the whirlpool and boarded the ship again, both Garp and Kizaru couldn't help but froze for a moment. In front of them, there are more giant whirlpools, and countless whirlpools are tightly arranged together, forming an extremely spectacular scene. At the edge of the whirlpool, Garp also saw stone pillars protruding from the shallow sea, and even at the top of the stone pillars, he also found some plants on the seabed. It is conceivable that these stone pillars were a few hours ago. It should still be underwater until it is smashed out by some kind of force. Oh, it's very spectacular here. Kizaru stood at the stern, looking at the surrounding environment with interest. It's spectacular. Unlike Kizaru's randomness, Garp's mood became heavier and heavier. This level of destructive power is so amazing that even Garp can't imagine how powerful it is to cause such an effect. Unconsciously, the two have been moving forward for more than 10 minutes. After crossing the last maelstrom, Garp finally saw his destination. This is it. Garp's pupils shrank, and he couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise. Beside him, Kizaru couldn't help showing a confused look on his face, and took out a chart from his arms. That's not right. Shouldn't there be an island called Lanka here? Kizaru looked up at the direction, then looked at the chart in his hand, looking confused. Even if they deviate from the direction seriously, they will not lose sight of an island with an area of several hundred square kilometers. What exactly is going on? At this moment, Garp suddenly rose into the air, stepped on the moon step, and galloped forward. Mr. Garp what are you doing Kizaru shouted at Garp's back, but Garp didn't even want to stop, he didn't even mean to turn back, he looked anxious. Forget it I'll row slowly by myself. Kizaru pouted and picked up the paddle beside him with a sad face. As a devil fruit person, Kizaru really can't accept anything like rowing a boat in dangerous waters. Mr. Garp is also true, what are you running? Kizaru thought in his heart. It wasn't until half an hour later that Kizaru found Garp. At this time, Garp was standing on a rock with his back to him, exuding a dignified aura. Hey Kizaru jumped onto the reef and stopped Garp's shoulder lazily. How is it? Mr. Garp, what did you find? Here, Garp suddenly handed Kiwi a handful of plants. This is bitter taro grass. What's wrong? What's so strange? At first, Kizaru's expression was somewhat casual, but only halfway through the words, Kizaru's voice stopped abruptly, his eyes suddenly widened, and he looked at Carp with an unbelievable expression. Hey, Mr. Carp, you don't want to tell me that you pulled this taro grass in this place? Kazuna stepped on the reef under his feet with an exaggerated expression on his face. Bitter taro grass has always lived in the mountains above 300 meters, how could it be here? Kazuna. Carp interrupted the Kiribati suddenly loudly, looking at him with a dignified expression. I found it here. Now it turns out that the reef under our feet was once a mountain that belonged to Lanka Island. The whole island of Lanka was sunk. Now it's at our feet. Sink. The island. Kizaru repeated Garp's words in a low voice, somewhat unacceptable. It can also be done by sinking the island, but it is a small island several kilometers in size, not a giant island with an area of several hundred square kilometers. Looking at Kizaru's expression, Garp sighed, and he didn't want to believe this fact, but now. The fact is in front of him. Look further ahead. Carp sighed, taking off again. Chapter 157 Kaido's Death. This time, the Kiwi also followed, because in front of them, a dense reef gradually appeared, or the high point of the island. A few minutes later, the two of Carp stopped again. What appeared in front of them this time were countless dark cracks. What is this? Huang Yuan frowned slightly. The strange scene along the way had made him have to put away the randomness in his heart, and it was rare to be serious. I don't know. Carp shook his head, then picked up a stone under his feet and threw it at the crack. When they saw that the stone was neatly cut by the crack, their breathing paused for a while, and the atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Get out of the way. Carp broke the silence. Yeah. Kizaru nodded with a heavy expression on his face. He had a feeling that this bastard might have the ability to hurt him. There are many space cracks along the way, but fortunately, Garp and Kayabu's physical skills are far superior to ordinary people. With a little attention, they can be easily avoided. Finally, the two arrived at the very center of what was once the island. As the highest point of the island, it still barely maintains an intact piece of land. Garp and Kizaru looked at each other, nodded, and started searching tacitly. 10 minutes later, Kizaru, who was searching, suddenly saw a signal flare rising from Garp's side, and ran over quickly. Mr. Carp, what did you find? Kizaru asked eagerly. However, Carp did not respond to him, but stood on the ground with his head lowered, staring at the things on the ground. It was a long white curved horn that seemed to be about 3 meters in length. An animal's horn. This was Kizaru's first impression, but he always felt that the horn was a little familiar. Garp in front of him suddenly took a deep breath, picked up the horn on the ground, and looked up at Kizaru. Notify the headquarters, the matter here is beyond our ability. Notice what? Huang Yuan scratched his head and didn't understand the situation. Hearing Kizaru's words, Garp couldn't help but look at the long horn in his hand again. This is Kaido's corner. In other words, Kaido is probably dead here. Even so, Garp had already decided Kaido's death in his heart. With Kaido's temper, there is absolutely no such thing as running away. If he can find his horn here, the chance of Kaido surviving is very small. Thinking of Kaido, the beast who had been in the world for decades, it is likely that he has disappeared from this world, and Garp couldn't help but feel a little sigh. This may be the first big pirate to die after Roger's death, and it is still killed by someone. This world is really going to change. Garp looked up at the sky, a rare old look on his face, some heroic twilight. It wasn't until Garp's figure gradually disappeared from sight that Kizaru broke free from the shock. Beast Kaido, dead, killed by someone. What are you kidding? Navy headquarters, in the marshal's office. Okay, I understand, you should return as soon as possible, don't have any stops, and don't go to investigate, understand? Warring States said to the phone bug in front of him. Understood. Garp's voice came from the other end of the phone bug. After hanging up the phone, Sengoku collapsed on the chair with some collapse, and the thoughts in his mind were chaotic. That Kaido is actually dead. That Kaido, who has failed 7 times, been captured 18 times, has been tortured more than 1,000 times, and can't die even if he is executed, actually died like this. Until now, Sengoku is still a little hard to believe this fact. Who the hell can kill Kaido? At this moment, a name suddenly appeared in Sengoku's mind. Is that you? The Dimensional Brigade, Warring States murmured in a low voice. At this time, Roha, who killed Kaido, had already arrived in the slave fleet. Relying on the bow, Roha looked at the busy people on the deck lightly, and all those who passed by him looked at him with awe. They have already heard that it was this Lord Gilgamesh who killed the 4 Emperor Kaido. The 4 emperors, a big man they would never be able to touch in their entire lives, actually died at the hands of Lord Gilgamesh. And most importantly, Lord Gilgamesh and their leader Estes are colleagues. Thinking of being able to hug such a golden thigh in the future, all the slaves are full of energy. Where are we going next? Estes sat lazily on the railing beside Roha, shaking his greasy legs, looking at Roha with a smile. Next, Roha turned around, leaned on the railing, looked at the blue sea, and hooked the corners of his mouth. Let's take over some things that belong to us. Target, Beast Island. Chapter 158 Notify the World. New World, Beast Island. As the residence of the 4 emperors and the beast pirates, this place has always been known as the forbidden area of life. Vessels coming and going, whether it is a pirate ship, a merchant ship, or even a warship, would rather go around a distance of several hundred nautical miles than pass near the Beast Island. Today, however, that rule is about to be broken. Hey, look, there are a few boats coming over there. A pirate on the pier pointed to the distance with a look of surprise. On the sea in the distance, several ships that looked dilapidated and looked like they had gone through a battle were swaying toward the pier. Lost ship. So many ships getting lost together. That's ridiculous. It's impossible to attack us. It's not even more ridiculous. Who knows? Wait for them to come over and talk about it. Let's talk about it first. Don't kill all the women for a while. I know, I'll keep one for you later. The pirates on the dock pointed at the fleet in the distance with a strange look, and laughed loudly, but no one signaled. There is no way, because the ships that sailed over were really broken, and there were holes blown out by shells everywhere. The guy who really had the strength to challenge the beast pirates could be beaten like this. What's more, if there is a little situation, I will report it up, annoyed the adults guarding the island, and they are the ones who suffer. Very poor vigilance. Esters on the bow sneered mercilessly. Because this is the Beast Island, daring to make trouble here is no less than hitting Kaido in the face. After speaking, Roha spread his hands. It seems that they don't know that they are already the beast pirates. The last members of the regiment. Leave this occupation war to me. Estes moved her wrists and looked excitedly at the approaching pier. When she saw the group of loose pirates, she even revealed a bloodthirsty smile. She had been suppressed by Kaido before, which really made her a little uncomfortable. As you like, but be careful not to damage the buildings here. Roha smiled slightly. That's all our property. Understood. Estes smiled sweetly, and before the boat docked, he jumped, stepped on the ice, and rushed towards the stunned pirates on the pier. Behind her, Drago followed Estes with hundreds of slaves with good combat power. The bloody massacre was almost over in an instant, and Estes continued to charge towards the interior of the island without stopping. Looking at Estes who disappeared in the jungle, Roha sat on the bow of the boat a little bored, watching the sunset slowly falling in the distance. It's over. Roha sighed, not knowing whether he was feeling the time or talking about the beast pirates. At this moment, Tiger suddenly came over and glanced at the Beast Island in the distance with some pity. With his character, he would not participate in this kind of slaughter, but he would not say anything. Turning his head to look at Roha, facing Roha who was still in the appearance of Gilgamesh at this time, Tiger's face showed a tangled expression, a look that he wanted to say but did not dare to say. Is something wrong? Roha asked. Yeah, Tiger nodded. It looks like this is over. and we're going to leave. Hearing this, Roja raised his eyebrows and agreed to Tiger's request very simply. There are more than 30 Murlocs among the slaves who are willing to stay, and many Tiger and the others are useless. In fact, after arriving in the New World, Tiger and the Sun Pirates can leave, but because of the safety of the slaves, Tiger has stayed until now. After a few simple greetings, Tiger went back and led his companions to pack up. On the other hand, the battle on Beast Island did not last long. Facing Estes and Drago, the only remaining one of the three disasters had no resistance. In just an hour, the Beast Pirates team the remnants have been completely annihilated, and the cadre called Fire was even more tied up and caught in front of Roja. From now on, there will be no more Beast Pirates. A day later, Roja returned to the Seven Waters with satisfaction. In this battle against the Beast Pirates, in addition to the massive gold and silver treasures, Roja has also harvested 4 animal-type devil fruits. Of course, the biggest harvest is the fire that has reached the level of fruit awakening. It's just that the usefulness of the fire cannot be seen in the short term, but Roja believes that Yashang Tianjing will definitely bring him a surprise. On the second day after Roja returned to the Seven Waters, the new issue of Dream magazine was released again, but unlike the previous ones, this time there was an extra line of scarlet text on the cover of the magazine. Because the Beast Pirates provoked our group over and over again, which caused dissatisfaction among the members, so 3 days ago, the cadre Gilgamesh and member Artoria of the group jointly took action and officially annihilated the 2000 including Kaido and the 3 disasters. More than a few pirates, kill them all. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 159 Big Mom Sends a Girl. The release of this issue of the magazine is like dropping countless nuclear bombs all over the world, stunned everyone. New World, Cake Island. An exclamation came from the center of Cake Island. Kaido, dead. The ant looked at the magazine in disbelief, not even caring that the cherished cake was knocked over by her hand, clutching the magazine tightly in both hands, looking at the line of scarlet words over and over again. Impossible, impossible, how could Kaido just die like this? Auntie's aura was fluctuating endlessly, her eyes were bloodshot. That man is absolutely impossible to be killed, fake, must be fake. Quote. Katakuri. The ant turned her head sharply to look at Katakuri who was standing at the door. Tell me. Is what the Dimension Brigade said true or false? Mom, it's very likely. True, Katakuri replied with a gloomy face. I have already asked the intelligence personnel, and I went to the Dark World to buy news. The Beast Pirates have been destroyed. Kaido I also died on Lanka Island. The situation on Lanka Island is very strange. Not only did the whole island sink to the bottom of the sea, but there were also some cracks around it that could cut through anything. So Mom, it's possible that Kaido is really dead. Dead. Auntie sat back down on the bed, her face a little confused. Beast Kaido, that person who was much stronger than her, just died like that. Killed by a cadre of the Dimension Brigade. Does that mean that the Dimension Brigade can also obliterate her at will? Suddenly, the ant shuddered and turned her head to look at Katakuri. Where's the cradle? Mom, Cricket went to pick up the cake for you, and should be on the way back now. Katakuri replied respectfully. Tell him that you don't need to take it again in the future. After speaking, the ant suddenly took a sip of saliva. No, I still have to take it, 3 months. No, it's still a month, I take it once a month. The thirst for food even overcomes the ant's fear of the Dimensional Brigade. By the way, go and call all my daughters, I have something to announce. Yes, Mother. After Katakuri left, the ant rubbed her chin while she stuffed the cake into her mouth. What kind of women do Gilgamesh and Roja like? Not long after, Yin Yin Yan Yan, a large group of women appeared in front of the ant. Mom. Mom, good afternoon. Mom, what are you doing to us? As soon as she entered the door, Auntie's many daughters stood in front of her and spoke one after another, which was extremely spectacular and noisy. Quiet. Aunt's eyes widened, and no one dared to speak in the whole room. Slightly restraining her irritability, the aunt touched her chin and began to look at her daughters. Over the years, she has raised 39 daughters. In addition to the married or dead, there are more than 20 people in front of her at this time. The age range of these 20 people is huge. The oldest one is nearly 40 years old, and the youngest one is less than 10 years old. Looking at her group of daughters with different looks, the aunt felt a headache for the first time. There are not many beautiful ones here. Because of her unique hobby, she has found men from all races in the world, including long siblings, long legs, snake-headed clan, mermaid clan, three-eyed clan. It covers so many races, it is simply appalling. This also means that most of her daughters are mixed races, which do not meet the aesthetics of normal human beings at all. No, it should be out of the aesthetics of Gilgamesh and Roha. Katakuri, give me the information of all the women that Roha and Gilgamesh have been in close contact with so far. The aunt rubbed her head and said. It's been ready for you. Katakuri took out a document from his arms and handed it to the aunt. Soon, the only sound in the room was the sound of auntie reading documents. After a while, the aunt raised her head and sighed. It's all ordinary human beings. Raising her head, the aunt glanced at the daughters, and after a while, she pointed at someone. You stay, Garrett, and the rest of you go. But just finished speaking, Aunt suddenly saw a smaller figure in the crowd, and quickly added, Bryn, you also stay. Huh, me. Bryn pointed to herself with a bewildered expression. 3.6 was a little unbelievable. She is thin and has low self-esteem. She has always been the target of bullying. Even BIGMOM cares little about her. She didn't expect to be named by BIGMOM today, which made her a little surprised. It's you. Aunt nodded, and at the same time, the sugar in the document appeared in her heart. I don't know about that Roha. Does it have a hobby of liking young girls, but it doesn't matter if Bryn is married off. The aunt thought to herself. Chapter 160 LV5. New skill. After everyone disappeared, the aunt slowly said that she wanted to let Garrett and Bryn marry into the Dimensional Brigade and have a marriage. Remember, when you arrive in the capital of Seven Waters, you must try your best to seduce the man named Roha. As long as you become his woman, glory, wealth and wealth will be within your reach. I object. Garrett suddenly shouted with a displeased expression. I will never marry a man I have never met. Although Bryn on the side did not object, there was still a look of resistance on his face. At this moment, an invisible coercion suddenly appeared in the room, and Garrett trembled, as if remembering something, and looked at the aunt whose face suddenly changed in horror. Garrett, the aunt stretched her voice and looked at Garrett with a gloomy face. Did you misunderstand something? I never asked for your opinion, my words or orders. You want to resist me. Garrett trembled all over, and finally remembered Aunt's terrifying personality and her children who had lost their lifespan and died of old age, and hurriedly knelt down. No, no, Mom, I'll go. Very good. The aunt nodded with a gloomy face. This afternoon, you and Bryn will leave, and I will send someone to escort you. Now, get ready. Yes, Mom. The two women had different expressions, but in the end they surrendered to the intimidation of the aunt. Things like this happen all over the world. Those forces that once had an unhappy relationship with the Dimensional Brigade hurriedly sent apologies, and those forces that had no contact with the Dimensional Brigade extended their branches of goodwill one after another, trying to climb the behemoth of the Dimensional Brigade. Doflamingo brought control of dozens of newspaper offices. Tezzolo sent a solid gold statue 20 meters high, and 7 companies in the Seven Waters silently gave away the mayor's throne. The West Sea Mafia sent a ship of high-quality slaves, and even the world government sent a vice admiral to express his goodwill. There are countless gifts like this. For these, Roha is not polite, and looks like one. If you dare to give it, I dare to accept it. It was even said that when the Lieutenant General visited, he brought a famous sword from the Navy Roha and accepted it in front of the Lieutenant General. And the Lieutenant General didn't even move his eyebrows, pretending he didn't see it. There is no way, a force that can annihilate the 4 emperors, even the world government does not dare to rashly become an enemy. not to mention, it was not robbed by Roja. At such a time, the Lieutenant General could only silently write down the name of the gift giver and look for trouble later. As for the invitation to cooperate after the gift, Roja said, "Hee, I'll talk about it after I screen it." After receiving gifts for a few days in a row, after meeting the leaders and spokespersons of various forces, Roja was a little annoyed. It happened that the promotion task had been completed at this time. He patted his butt and signaled that Monet would take over after Yuzayu. Ye went back home. Call out the system and click to complete the task. The system's voice will sound immediately. Congratulations to the host for completing the promotion task and successfully promoted to the intermediate cartoonist. Pay special attention to the system opening. Close black lens bracket. Experience value has reached the upper limit. Start automatic upgrade. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. The cartoonist level has reached level 5 and obtained 1 skill point. Please click the skill as soon as possible. Close black lens bracket. After opening the skill tree, the 5th level skills have been lit up, and Roja looked at them one by one. Manga World Lottery. After clicking on the skill, the comic lottery can choose the extraction range, whether to extract the current comic or the comic world. Keyword search LV2. After clicking on the skill, you can enter 2 keywords in the keyword lottery. LV2. Roja raised his brows and asked in his mind, "System, can the skill level be upgraded?" Of course, but the skill level will be limited by the level of the host cartoonist. The highest skill level of a junior cartoonist is level 1, the highest level of an intermediate cartoonist is level 2, and so on 360. So it is. Roja nodded, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but hook up. Skills can be upgraded, which is great news. The first thing that came to Roja's mind was the skill he first acquired. Open black lens bracket, flexible hands, close black lens bracket. Flexible hands LV1. The painting speed is increased by 5 times. This skill increased his arm speed by a full 5 times. Even if the swing of the sword is not as flexible as the empty hand, it also makes his sword speed reach an unimaginable height. If this skill reaches level 2, what will change? 8 times. Or 10 times. This hand speed is simply invincible. Roja whispered in his heart. But after thinking about it, Roja still didn't forget the business, reached out and clicked on the first skill, Manga World Lottery. Open the lottery interface a little more, and sure enough, something has changed.